Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today we're heading deep into the heart of Texas, where long, empty highways stretch into the night, and the strangers you meet out there might not be what they seem. From shadowy figures walking the roadsides to drivers who vanish into thin air, these 20 true Texas stories about strangers on dark roads will make you rethink every lonely mile you've ever driven after midnight. But before we dive in, here's something strange. Most people who watch these stories make one big mistake: they leave without subscribing. And by doing that, they miss out on some of the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's stories, they're just the beginning. The terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments. I always wonder who's out there, listening in the dark with me. Now, let's get into it. Ray Martinez wasn't the type of man to scare easy. 42 years old, 2 divorces behind him, a daughter he barely spoke to in San Antonio, and a lifetime spent driving trucks up and down the veins of Texas highways had burned the fear out of him a long time ago. He'd seen things on the road fires in the desert sky, bodies twisted from wrecks so bad you couldn't tell where the metal ended and the people began, animals moving in ways no living thing ought to, but he'd always been able to shrug it off, chalk it up to exhaustion or the heat or whiskey creeping up the back of his throat during the lonelier nights. Highway 281, though, had a way of clawing under a man's skin if you let it. It wasn't his usual route. He preferred the long, straight stretches through West Texas where there was nothing but sky and sand and the hum of the engine to keep him company. But this haul took him east, weaving through those 2-lane blacktops where the trees crowded close and the towns flickered past in half-dead neon. Somewhere between Blanco and Johnson City, with the clock pushing up on 2:30 in the morning, he saw her. First, it was just a shape up ahead, small and pale against the dark. His headlights caught her at the edges, like the world hadn't quite decided whether she was real or not. He thought maybe it was a deer, or some drunk stumbling home from one of those backwoods bars that only seem to exist so men can ruin their lives in peace. But as he got closer, the shape sharpened into a figure, a woman, standing right at the edge of the asphalt, one arm stretched out like she was hitching a ride. Blue dress, torn at the hem, hanging heavy like it had been soaked through, barefoot, hair long and dark and tangled down her shoulders. Ray eased off the gas, squinting through the windshield like maybe she'd make more sense if he just looked hard enough. Something about her didn't sit right, though he couldn't have said exactly what. Maybe it was how still she was. No shifting from foot to foot, no glancing up the road to check for cars. Just standing there, arm out, face half turned from the light, like she'd been waiting for him, like she'd known he was coming. He told himself not to stop. Too many stories started with a man pulling over for a stranger on a dark road and never making it home. But something about the angle of her head, the slump of her shoulders, made it feel like leaving her there would be worse than whatever might happen if he didn't. So he slowed, rolled the truck to a crawl, leaned across the seat to crank down the passenger window. "You all right, ma'am?" He called out, voice rough from disuse. She didn't answer, didn't move, just kept that hand out, palm up, fingers curled a little like she was holding something invisible. "Need a ride somewhere? You shouldn't be out here like this. Ain't safe." Still nothing. Ray felt the hairs on his arms rise, a slow, crawling itch that started at the base of his neck and worked its way down his spine. He flicked his brights on, more out of habit than sense, and watched as the light washed over her. For a second, just a breath, just the blink between now and gone. She wasn't there. The beam hit empty road, empty shoulder, empty trees curling up behind. Then the light shifted, caught on something pale and fluttering in the wind, and she was back, standing 5 feet closer than before. Still silent, still waiting. His hand went to the door lock without him thinking about it, thumb pressing down hard enough to hurt. He couldn't see her face. That was the worst of it. The way her hair hung, the tilt of her head, it all seemed designed to keep him from seeing what was underneath. But he thought, maybe, that her mouth was moving. Small shapes, slow words. Nothing he could hear but something he could almost feel pressing against the glass between them. Ray swallowed hard. Shifted the truck into drive. "Sorry, lady," he muttered. "Not tonight." He pulled away slow, watching her in the mirror until the dark swallowed her whole. For a mile after, he kept checking over his shoulder, half expecting to see her. Walking up the yellow line behind him, gaining ground no matter how fast he pushed the pedal. But the road stayed empty. The night stayed still. He told himself it was over. Just a trick of the eyes, a trick of the road. Stress and loneliness. And too many miles. But 3 exits later, at a gas station glowing sickly under flickering bulbs, he saw her again. Not in the flesh this time, but in a photo pinned to the corkboard behind the counter, half faded and curling at the edges. Missing, it said, since 1974. Last seen wearing a blue dress, barefoot, walking north along Highway 281. The clerk caught him staring. "You see her?" he asked, like it was a normal question, like it was something you asked a man buying coffee at 3 in the morning. Ray didn't answer. Paid in crumpled bills, left without his change. Drove fast enough to make the horizon bleed into itself. He didn't tell anyone, not then. Not later. Not even when he woke up nights with the sound of fingers tapping on glass, soft and steady like rain that wasn't really there. Not even when he started seeing shapes in his mirrors, in the stretch of road behind him, in the slant of light that caught too pale against the trees. Not even when his daughter called to say she dreamed about a woman in a blue dress standing outside her window, staring in with empty eyes. Some things you don't speak aloud. Some stories keep themselves alive by passing from mouth to mouth. Whispered over coffee and truck stops and bar stools, left in the corners of maps where the roads run thin. And some things ride with you, whether you stop for them or not. I first heard about the man with no eyes on FM 1709 from an old-timer who worked nights at the Chevron on the edge of Keller. He was one of those wiry, sunburnt Texas men with a cough that sounded like it had been earned through decades of chain smoking and cheap whiskey. I was in my 20s then, restless, full of bad ideas and worse habits, and I spent a lot of late nights drinking coffee at that gas station while figuring out how not to go home. "You ever see him yet?" the old man asked me one night, scratching at the liver spots on his neck. Tall fella, thin as a fence post, black suit like it's still 1964. Stands out there off 1709 near the tree line, thumb out like he's looking for a ride. Got sunglasses on, even in the dark. You get close enough, you'll see why. Ain't nothing behind him. No eyes. Just skin stretched smooth where they oughta be. I laughed at first, the way you laugh when an old man tells you a ghost story, and you think he's messing with you for his own amusement. But then he just looked at me, long, quiet. "You don't gotta believe me," he said finally, "but keep your ass off that road after midnight. Thing is, Keller ain't exactly a place where legends grow. It's suburban sprawl and strip malls and chain restaurants. But there's something about the edges of towns like that, the highways, that connect nothing to nowhere but feels old beneath the concrete, older than Keller, older than Texas. The first time I saw the man was late October, a Thursday, maybe 1:30 in the morning. I'd been drinking in Fort Worth, took a wrong turn, ended up on 1709 heading west. The moon was out, fat and yellow and low over the fields, and the radio was playing something soft and lonesome. Didn't matter what. That road doesn't have much to it. Long stretches of blacktop, fence posts leaning like tired men, the occasional skeletal remains of a barn. Then I saw him. He was standing just past the bend near an old church that hadn't been used in decades. Thumb out, head down. Like he was praying. Black suit, black tie, pale hands. Sunglasses gleaming in the headlights like coins at the bottom of a dark well. I slowed without thinking. Just instinct. Hitchhiker at night, looks like trouble, but maybe he needs help. I pulled over. He didn't move. Just stood there, head still bowed, thumb out like some statue carved from bone and dust. The moment he got in, the temperature dropped. Not like it's a cold night cold. I mean sudden, deep, marrow cold. Like something opened the door behind him and let all the warmth out into whatever waited beyond the trees. He sat in the passenger seat, hands on his knees, never looked. At me. Where you headed? I asked. My throat felt thick. Words came slow. He didn't answer. I glanced over. The glasses were big, old-fashioned, the kind an old man might wear to shield his cataracts from the sun. Except up close you could see the shape of the sockets beneath them wasn't right. Not hollow exactly, more. Smooth, blank, like skin. Stretched too tight over a hole where something had been dug out. I kept driving. The road stretched on ahead, black and empty. No cars, no lights, just that endless line peeling out beneath my tires. You all right, man? I tried again. Need me to take you somewhere? Nothing. Not a sound. Not even the weight of breath. That's when the smell hit me. Not rot exactly, not death, but old things. Cellars, damp concrete. Dust that hasn't been disturbed in centuries. I thought of graves. I thought of things buried beneath rock and earth that should stay buried. He raised his head then. Just a little. Not toward me. Toward the window, as if listening to something out there in the black. That's when I heard it too. Footsteps. Not on the road. Not outside the car. Underneath. Slow. Pacing. Back and forth beneath the floorboards like something trapped beneath. The skin of the world. I kept driving. Faster now. 40, 50, 60. The road wasn't made for that kind of speed, but I couldn't help it. I wanted him out of my car. I wanted to be out of that place. Off that road. Back under the lights. Of a town where people lived and breathed and died in the usual ways. He spoke then. Not loud. Not a whisper either. Just a sound like breath moving through dry leaves. Wrong turn. That's all. Wrong turn. I looked at him again. Really looked. The glasses were slipping down his nose, and beneath them, where his eyes should have been, was just pale flesh, seamless, blank, like God had made a mistake and forgotten something. The footsteps beneath the car kept pace. Faster now. Heavy. Angry. I felt the weight of them, like teeth pressing through my spine. I hit the gas. 90. 100. Didn't care about the curve ahead or the ditch beyond it. Just wanted out, out, out. He smiled then, I think. Hard to tell with no eyes. But the mouth moved in a way that wasn't right. Too wide, too sharp dot, and then he was gone. Not got out. Not vanished in a puff of smoke. Just wasn't there anymore. Passenger seat empty. Door never opened. Cold lifting like a blanket pulled away. I stopped the car a mile later, hands shaking too hard to hold the wheel. Got out. Puked in the grass. When I looked back down the road, there he was. Standing in the center of the lane, thumb out, head down. Same spot I picked him up. Same posture. Waiting. I never drove FM 1709 again after midnight. Hell, I barely drove it in daylight, but people still see him. Ask around the gas stations, the truck stops. They'll tell you, Man in black, no eyes, waiting for someone who doesn't know better than to stop. Some say he's a ghost. Others say he's something older than ghosts, older than roads. A thing that walks because it remembers. When men first learn to run from the dark, doesn't matter what he is, just don't pick him up. It's a stretch of highway most folks try not to think about too hard, especially after midnight. Interstate 35 between Waco and Austin runs long and flat, cutting through black farmland and nameless scrub towns that never fully wake up, even in daylight. Truckers pass through because they have to, not because they want to, and over the years, stories have started to cling to this part of Texas like dead leaves caught on a barbed wire fence. One of those stories is about a kid. A barefoot kid. About 10 or 11, skinny as a stick, wearing nothing but a filthy white t-shirt and underwear, walking slow down the median, head hanging low like he's looking for something in the dirt. You only see him if you're alone, they say. You only see him if you're tired, your eyes burned raw from too many miles and too much caffeine. That's when he shows up right in the middle of that narrow grass strip between northbound and southbound lanes, walking steady but aimless, like a dog that slipped out of somebody's backyard 20 years ago and never figured out how to come home. If you pass him by, nothing happens. Most drivers do. They get a chill, maybe they mutter a prayer, and they keep rolling south toward Austin or north toward Waco. Whichever hell is waiting for them next. But if you stop, that's where the stories get mean. They say he's fast. Not when you're looking at him. Not when he's out there under the sodium lights and the moon. But when you pull over, because maybe you're thinking about calling it in, maybe you're a good soul and think you can help, something happens. The moment you shift into park and blink, he's not out there anymore. The grass is empty. The boy is gone. You can sit there in the cab, blinking at the space he should be, and it won't make a damn bit of difference. And then, if you're smart, you'll check your doors. See, that's the part the old hands warn about. If your passenger side door wasn't locked, it might be standing wide open now. Happened to me one night. Yeah, I know. You think I'm telling tales. Everybody does until it's them sitting there with a hair crawling on the back of their neck and a door swinging empty beside them. I was running south out of Fort Worth, pushing through past midnight, hauling light so I could make time. Pulled off at that ragged little Love's just north of Temple, fueled up, and figured I could make Austin by 2 if I didn't stop again. Sky was clear, radio dead, nothing but my tires and the hum of the road for company. Somewhere past Troy, maybe around mile marker 305, I saw him. Little figure, hunched and slow, bare feet black with road grime. His shirt looked more like a rag than something fit for wearing, and his hair hung in greasy clumps. Couldn't see. His face real well too much shadow under the highway lamps. My first thought was runaway. Second thought was hallucination. Third was the worst. This was something I wasn't supposed to see. I should have kept going. God knows I should have. But the brain plays tricks when you're tired. And something about a barefoot kid out here in the dark tugs at old, buried instincts. I rolled to the shoulder, eased up slow with my hazards on, watching him in the mirror. He didn't turn. He didn't look. Just kept walking, steady as a sleepwalker. By the time I came to a full stop and glanced back, he was gone. I mean gone. Not crouching, not hiding, not darting off into the weeds. Just gone like he'd never been there at all. I sat there a minute, feeling stupid. My pulse was thumping high and fast, my mouth dry. I reached for my water bottle, turned to set it down, and saw my passenger door hanging open. Now, that door was shut when I left Temple. I lock it out of habit, always have. The hinge was stiff from years of hard miles. It didn't swing easy, yet there it was, yawning wide to the blackness beyond the guardrail. I shut it fast, locked it harder. Sat there breathing like a man twice my age, sweat crawling cold down my neck. Didn't even look in the sleeper. Didn't want to. I didn't hear anything. Didn't see anything. But something in my gut said don't. Just don't. I threw her in gear and pulled back onto the highway, rolling steady but not fast. Eyes on the mirrors, heart in my throat. Nothing followed me. Nothing showed up in the glass, but about 10 miles up, I passed under another light, and there he was again, closer this time, closer to the shoulder. Bare feet, dirty shirt, face still hidden, walking slow like nothing mattered, but whatever was. Waiting out there ahead of him in the dark, I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. You can call it superstition. Call it truck stop bullshit. But next time you're running I-35 between Waco and Austin and you see that kid, keep your doors locked. Keep your eyes ahead. Don't pull over. Don't go. Looking for him, because if you do, you might find out what's riding shotgun before you make it to your next stop. He first noticed it because of the sign. Not a billboard, not a neon glow in the distance. Not even one of those old-fashioned highway signs with arrows promising clean bathrooms and hot coffee. This was something cruder, something out of place. On a stretch of Route 66 he'd driven a dozen times between Amarillo and Tucumcari. A sheet of wood, maybe plywood, splintered at the corners. Spray-painted in uneven block letters. Gas. He almost missed it. Darren wasn't even that low on gas. The gauge hovered just above a quarter tank, and he had enough to make it to Tucumcari easy, but something about the loneliness of the road gnawed at him. He hadn't seen another car for miles. The sun hung low, bleeding orange into the desert. Horizon, and even with the AC humming, he could feel the heat clawing at the edges of the glass. The sign sat crooked in the dirt, a faded arrow pointing left down what looked like a barely there dirt path. Curiosity mixed with unease, but he turned the wheel anyway. Maybe it was the road, or maybe it was the heat, but it felt like he drove longer than he should have. The dirt lane twisted once behind a rise of dead brush, and there it was. The gas station. It looked like something out of a photograph from the 50s, the kind they hang in diners. Single pump out front, squat little building behind it with dusty windows and peeling paint. Henderson Service read the sign above the door, faded almost to nothing beneath decades of sun. The pump itself was the old kind, rounded edges. Big dial numbers. 66 per gallon, the sign claimed. There was no car in sight, no movement in the windows. No sound but the ticking of his engine cooling beneath the hood when he shut it off. For a minute, he just sat there behind the wheel, staring. Something about the place scratched at memory, but not any real one he could pin down. More like a photograph he'd seen once or a story his grandfather told. He stepped out anyway, felt the oppressive heat fall on him like a heavy coat. Gravel crunched under his boots. The pump had a nozzle, the kind you had to flick a lever on. No credit card slot, obviously. A rusty bell above the door jangled weakly when he pushed inside. It was cooler in the shade, but smelled like dust and oil and something fainter. Something like old leather or smoke. Shelves lined the walls but held nothing but cobwebs and empty. Bottles. Behind the counter sat an old cash register, one of those brass ones with round buttons and a lever to crank the drawer open. Hello? His voice sounded too loud, then too small, swallowed by the dusty gloom. A man stepped out from the back room. He wasn't young. Gray hair slicked back, skin tanned to leather, blue coveralls with Henderson stitched over the breast in faded red. Thread. His eyes looked not right. Too light. Almost like glass. Help you with something? Yeah, just need to top off the tank. How do I? The old man just nodded once, slow, and moved to the door. Darren followed. The pump didn't hum to life like modern ones. No lights flickered on. The old man twisted something on the side, flipped the lever down with a metal clunk, and held the nozzle out to him. "You pump it yourself." Darren hesitated, took the nozzle. His hand came away with a smear of old grime. Gasoline smelled stronger than it should have. "How?" "Much you want?" the old man asked. "Just fill it." No reply. The old man just stared, eyes glassy, hands hanging at his sides. Darren pumped the gas. The dial spun lazy circles. 5 gallons, 6, 7. He thought maybe the pump was lying because it felt like it should have stopped sooner, but he let it run until it coughed empty at 10 gallons. 10 even. The man said. Darren pulled out his wallet, thumbing through bills. "What do I owe you?" 10 even. He handed over a 20. The old man took it, stepped behind the register, and with a crank and a rattle the drawer popped open. He counted out change like he was handling relics. "You drive careful now, right? Thanks." When he turned to go, he thought he heard something under the old man's breath. A name, maybe. Sounded like Evelyn or Evangeline, something old and soft like that. The car started fine. The tank read full. He drove back down the dirt lane slower than before, stomach feeling a little unsettled, like maybe the gas had gone bad or the heat was getting to him. By the time he hit the main road again, the sky had burned itself out into twilight and the stars bled through. It wasn't until the next morning, coffee in hand at a truck stop in Tucumcari, that he thought about it again. The waitress had asked where he was headed. He told her back to Amarillo, and somehow the conversation drifted. "There's a place out that way, used to be a gas station. Years back," she said, pouring refills like clockwork. "Out past Clovis, nearer the old fields. Burned down, though. Long time ago." "How long ago?" 50 years, maybe more. Folks said it was haunted, back when people still told stories like that. Man named Henderson owned it. Lost his daughter, little thing, got caught under a car lift when it collapsed. He stayed on a while after, then one night the place burned. Never rebuilt. Just a concrete slab and some old pipes sticking up out the dirt now. He smiled, tried to brush it off. "Well, someone rebuilt it. I got gas there yesterday." Her face didn't change at first, then it did, slowly, like ice melting off an expression beneath. "No, hon, you didn't. I saw it. Pumped my own gas. Paid a guy named Henderson. You sure about that?" He didn't answer. Just thought about the cold feel of the pump handle, the dusty register, the 2 light eyes. When he drove back that way, a week later, just to prove it to himself, there was no dirt road, no wooden sign, no pump, no squat little building. Just empty scrubland stretching out in all directions. Wind-stirring dust where nothing had been for 50 years. His tank still read full, and the bills in his wallet? One was gone. Replaced with a crumpled, grease-smudged 10 bearing the date 1954. There's a stretch of Loop 1604 that runs wide and empty just outside San Antonio. A strip of blacktop that feels like it was laid down for ghosts more than people. Especially around 3 in the morning when the traffic is dead and the sky above hangs heavy with clouds, no stars, no moon, just darkness pressed in against your windshield like breath on glass. Folks who live out that way know better than to be on those roads after midnight. Not because of deer, not because of drunks, not even because of the long-haul truckers pushing too hard through the night. No, it's something else. Something older. Something no one quite wants to explain because once you speak it aloud, it seems to follow you home. They just say, "Don't mess with the pale driver on 1604. It was Mike who told me the story first, though not in so many words. He was the night manager at the Circle K out near Judson Road, just a few miles off the loop, and he worked those shifts long enough to see things most men would rather forget. We were sitting behind the counter, drinking burnt coffee, waiting for the sun to rise, and I asked him about the worst thing he'd seen on the job. He didn't answer for a long time. Just stared out the smudged window like he was waiting for something to pull into the lot. Then he said real soft, "That damn car. Old one. Cream-colored, rust bleeding through like sores under paint. Don't look like it ought to run at all. Every few weeks, about this time of night, it comes through. Not fast, not slow. Just weaving, like it's drunk, like it's tired, like it's lost." I laughed at first, thought he was pulling my leg, but Mike didn't smile. He tapped one nicotine-stained finger on the glass. Saw it with my own eyes, more than once. You try to look in the window as it passes, see who's driving. You think you want to see, but you don't. You really don't. Pale hands on the wheel, not white like a man's hands. Pale like something dead pulled from water, all swollen and wrong. Fingers too long. Gripping so tight it makes the skin split. No face behind the glass. No head above the wheel. Just the hands. And that car, humming along like it belongs here, like it's still on some road it remembers from 50 years ago. That stuck with me. Not the ghost part, not really. It was the detail. The color of the car. The way the hands looked. The kind of specifics people don't make up unless they've been thinking about them too long. I didn't believe it, but I didn't laugh anymore either. Weeks went by, maybe a month. I worked late, driving home at stupid hours, cutting across the loop because it shaved 10 minutes off the ride. You tell yourself those roads are just roads. Asphalt doesn't hold memory. Paint don't bleed fear. But somewhere past the 281 interchange, things got quiet in a way that felt thick. Like sound itself didn't want to be there. My headlights cut through the dark and showed me nothing but empty lanes stretching out ahead. Empty signs blinking over exits no one was taking. Then I saw a dot far ahead, maybe half a mile, something. Weaving between the lanes, not fast, not slow. Just a lazy, hypnotic drift. Tires touching the reflectors now and then to make that little thup-thup sound. I caught up fast enough. My eyes told me it was old, late 60s, maybe early 70s, a Dodge or Plymouth, hard to say under the dirt and rust that scabbed the cream-colored paint. Red taillights burned weak in the dark like sick eyes. The rear window was too. Dusty to see through clear. But I didn't need to see through it, because it drifted left almost onto the shoulder and I eased right to pass. That's when I looked. You would too. Curiosity is a sickness. No face, no head. Not crouched down low, not slumped beneath the dash, just gone. Seat empty like no one had ever sat there. But the hands, pressed white against the wheel, skin that wasn't skin. More. Like wax, too smooth in places, too cracked in others. Long fingers, knuckles stretched out like they were holding on against something pulling them back. No sleeves, no arms that I could see, not really. Just those hands, gripping like they'd never let go again. I passed fast after that. Didn't look again. Didn't want to see if those hands followed me with that slow turn of the wheel. Didn't. Want to wonder if the car even needed headlights to see where it was going. I just drove, fast and straight, and didn't breathe easy until I hit my exit and left the loop behind. Mike didn't say "I told you so" when I mentioned it the next night. He just poured me more coffee and said, "You'll see it again." They always do. Some folks once, some folks twice. Some keep seeing it until it follows them home. I stopped taking 1604 after that. Went the long way around, wasted gas, wasted time. I didn't care. But one night, when I wasn't thinking, I ended up on it again. Road work had signs pushed over the regular streets. Detours led me back to the loop like it was planned that way. I cursed, but what could I do? You follow the signs. You trust. The road knows where it's taking you. About 3 again. Of course. Because that's when it likes to come. This time I heard it before I saw it. A low hum like an engine struggling to stay awake. Not loud, not even close. Just there. Bleeding through the air vents. Vibrating up through the steering wheel. I checked my mirrors, saw nothing behind. Nothing ahead. But the hum stayed with me, pacing me, crawling up my spine like cold fingers. Then, the lights bloomed ahead. Twin reds, swaying gently side to side. My stomach nodded. My mouth went dry. Same car, same shape. Same sickness bleeding through the paint. I didn't want to pass it this time. I slowed. I stayed back. Maybe that would keep it from noticing me, but the road curved. The road narrowed. The road left me no choice but to pull up alongside. I kept. My eyes forward. I told myself, don't look. I told myself, you already know what's there, but that hum grew louder. Like it was inside the car with me now. Like it was coming from the seat beside me. I looked out, no driver, no head, no face. Just those hands. Pale and cracked, squeezing that wheel like they'd never let go. And this time, they moved, twitched, fingers flexing slow, like waking from sleep. Like stretching before a long, cold climb, I sped up. I didn't care if I hit 90 or 100. I didn't look back, not in the mirror, not out the side. I drove like hell and prayed to God I'd make it home before those hands decided they wanted something warmer to hold. Mike quit the Circle K a few months later. Moved out west closer to El Paso. Said he needed new roads. Sighed he was tired of looking in his rear view and seeing those taillights pacing him no matter how fast he drove. I heard about a wreck on the loop not long after. A car went off his shoulder, slammed into a concrete pillar. Driver burned up inside. They said the steering wheel was bent clean in half. Like someone had been gripping it too hard when they died. They never did say who was driving. Never found a name. Never found prints. Just charred bones curled around a melted wheel, clutching tight. I still don't take 1604 after midnight. I don't think I ever will again. Some roads forget you if you're lucky. Some roads remember. Some roads come looking for you when they think you're ready to drive with them. Forever. It was just past 1 a.m. when Matthew saw her for the first time. The long stretch of Highway 90 out past Uvalde was dark as pitch. The kind of dark that felt alive, like it was watching you from the fields and gullies beyond the headlights. He was heading west, trying to make it out to Marfa before dawn, where his brother had promised a job waiting tables at some overpriced cafe that catered to tourists looking for desert ghosts and UFO lights. He hadn't wanted to leave home, but home hadn't given him much choice lately. The girl stood on the narrow shoulder of the road about a mile past a crumbling roadside bar with a faded sign that read simply, beer. She wasn't hitchhiking. That was the first strange thing. She wasn't walking like someone trying to get anywhere in particular, either. Just standing, holding the handle of a scuffed, old-fashioned suitcase, the kind with brass corners and leather straps, something out of a black and white movie. She wasn't waving him down. Wasn't sticking out her thumb. She just watched him. Matthew felt her eyes on him as he drove by. A pressure on the side of his face like a hand pushing at his temple. His foot lifted from the gas for a second. Instinct. Something about the way. She stared like she was waiting. Like she knew him or would. For a mile or so he argued with himself. She's just some runaway. Some kid got dumped out of a car by a boyfriend. Some crazy family fight. You don't stop on roads like this for strangers at night, not anymore. Not ever. But the air in the car had gone heavy, thick like soup, and no matter how he rolled the window down, it wouldn't clear out. His skin crawled the way it had when he was a kid and thought he heard breathing under his bed. 3 miles on, he pulled onto the cracked shoulder and sat there, engine ticking, wondering what the hell he thought he was doing. He looked in the Vaden mirror. Nothing but red taillights painting the blacktop. No headlights coming either way. That was the thing about Highway 90 at night. Empty as a graveyard and twice as quiet. He turned the car around. She hadn't moved. Still standing there, suitcase at her side, staring straight ahead into nothing. He eased the car to a stop and leaned over to roll down the passenger window. "You okay?" "Nothing. Need a ride somewhere?" Slowly she turned her head. Pale face, dark hair hanging in damp strands. Eyes sunken, hollow-looking, like she hadn't slept in a year. Her mouth didn't move, but something about her expression shifted, like she just recognized him. Matthew unlocked the door without realizing it. She climbed in without a word. Set the suitcase on her lap, both arms around it like a child clinging to a teddy bear. The smell that came off her wasn't right. Not sweat or perfume or desert dust. More like wet dirt. Old dirt. Grave dirt, the kind that sticks to skin no matter how you scrub. "Where you headed?" She didn't answer. He tried again. "You live out here? Got family waiting?" Nothing. Just that blank, steady stare out the windshield. He told himself. Fine, maybe she was mute. Maybe she was scared. Didn't matter. He'd drive her as far as Sanderson. Let the cops or somebody else figure it out. Not his problem. But the miles slid by and something was off. The road signs looked wrong somehow. Numbers didn't add up. The moon, when it showed through the clouds, seemed too bright, too low. Shapes moved in the fields, quick little darts. Of shadow just outside the edges of the headlights, things with too many joints in their legs. Once he thought he saw a hand come up from a ditch, long-fingered and pale, like something reaching for help or maybe something worse. He didn't say anything. The girl hugged the suitcase tighter. "What's in there, huh?" He joked, trying to cut the silence. "Bricks? Gold? A head?" Her lips twitched, almost a smile. But not the good kind. Lights appeared ahead. A gas station, flickering neon open sign buzzing like an insect pinned to glass. He pulled in, killed. "The engine. You need the restroom or something." "I gotta grab coffee." She didn't move. Fine. Stay in the car. He went inside, got coffee that tasted like burned rubber, and stood at the window, looking out. Through the smeared glass, he could just see her sitting there, suitcase on her knees, staring straight ahead, not blinking. Not breathing, maybe. Late? "For traveling," said the cashier, a woman with too much eyeliner and a smoker's laugh. "That your girl?" Matthew said no. Didn't know her. Picked her up walking. The woman's face pulled in tight. "Out here?" "Yeah." "What's she look like?" He told her. Pale, black hair. Old suitcase. The woman went even paler than the girl in the car. "Boy, you need to get back in that car and you need to drive on and you don't. You dare. Stop again until you see the sun come up." "What are you talking about?" But she wouldn't answer. Just backed away, crossed herself, and wouldn't look him in the eye. When he went back outside, the girl was gone. Door hadn't opened. Seatbelt still buckled. Suitcase still sitting there on her lap like invisible hands held it down. He opened the door. Cold air poured out like the car had been sitting in a freezer. The suitcase wasn't locked. He flipped the latch. Inside wasn't clothes, wasn't papers, wasn't anything normal. Inside was dirt, packed tight. Damp, black, smelling. Of rot and things buried long, long ago. And something else, a little handprint in the dirt, child-sized, pressed deep like someone had been trapped under it. Matthew slammed it shut, hard banging like a fist on a door. He left the suitcase there, drove out of the lot so fast gravel. Spit behind him in a cloud. Didn't look back until dawn broke pale and gold over the mountains. When he finally pulled into Marfa, engine running hot, hands shaking, the passenger seat was empty. The suitcase was gone, but when he opened the glove box, he found a scrap of paper that hadn't been there before, browned at the edges like something torn from an old Bible. On it, in handwriting small and careful as a child's, were 3 words: "See you soon." They say Ranch Road 337 cuts through the hills like a scar left behind by something cruel and old. The locals call it Devil's Spine for a reason. Sharp curves, blind corners, and drops so steep they make your stomach crawl up your throat. The brush out there grows thick and wild, like it's trying to reclaim something that was never meant to be tamed by asphalt or man. And then there's the heat. That dry, hissing heat that makes the rocks sweat and the birds go silent by noon. I'm telling you all this because if you've never been down 337 at night, you need to understand, it's not a place built for people. Not really. The first time I heard about the old man walking backwards was in a bar in Leakey sometime around 97, when I was still young enough to think I knew something about the world. Old boy sitting next to me, teeth stained with tobacco and whiskey on his breath, leaned in like he was about to let me in on the biggest secret of my life. He said, "You see him, you keep driving. Doesn't matter if he looks hurt or lost or half dead. You keep driving. That son of a bitch ain't walking backwards for exercise." I laughed it off, like any fool would. Ghost stories and drunk cowboys, that's just Texas, right? But years roll by and stories stick. And some nights, when the wind's high and the moon's thin and mean, you find yourself remembering things you didn't think mattered. It wasn't until the summer of 2013 that I saw him for myself. I'd been driving out from Medina, heading west toward Camp Wood, taking that lonely stretch of 337 because I liked the quiet. My wife had left me 6 months before, and silence felt like the only company I deserved. It was close to midnight. The sky was the color of old bruises, and my headlights caught the dust like snowflakes in reverse. I hadn't seen another car in an hour. Then I saw him dot up ahead. In the glow of my high beams, a man dressed head to toe in black. Black slacks, black coat despite the heat, black hat pulled low over his face. Walking backwards right down the center of the road like he owned it. Not stumbling, not fumbling. Slow, deliberate steps. Heel to toe, like he'd been doing it his whole life. My first instinct was to slow down, and that's when I remembered the bar in Leakey. Keep driving. I eased off the gas just enough not to clip him, but I didn't stop. Couldn't even bring myself to look straight at him as I passed. Just enough to catch a glimpse in my mirror. He didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't break stride. Just kept walking backwards into the dark behind me. I told myself I was lucky. A week later, a buddy of mine, a rancher out near Vanderpool, got found dead in his truck, halfway down a ravine off 337. Sheriff said it looked like he swerved for something, maybe a deer. Folks at the funeral whispered about black suits and backward footsteps, but nobody said it out loud. Not where the preacher could hear. After that, I started paying attention. It's not just one man, see? Or maybe it is, but he's got a way of being everywhere at once. Folks from Leakey to Camp Wood tell the same story. Doesn't matter the year or the make of the car. Doesn't matter if it's a preacher or a drunk or a tourist just passing through. The story's always the same. Man in black walking backwards. You stop, you talk, you help, you disappear. Some say he's a devil, others say he's cursed. My favorite theory is he was a hitchhiker once, just like any other. Got picked up by the wrong person, did something wicked to survive. Now he's a fumbling, stuck out there, walking back the way he came, looking for someone dumb enough to take his burden. I stayed away from 337 after that night, for years. Took the long way around, even when it didn't make sense. But fear fades, doesn't it? Time dulls it down until you can almost pretend you imagined it. It was last summer when I broke my rule. My niece was getting married out in Uvalde, and my sister begged me to come. I told myself it'd be fine. Broad daylight. No harm in that. Coming back, though. That's when I screwed up. It was late. Real late. I'd had a couple of drinks. But not enough to be stupid, I thought. Took 337 because it had saved me an hour. That's the devil's bargain right there. Time for safety. Somewhere past Lost Maples, right where the road kinks like a snake about to strike, I saw him again. Same black suit, same black hat, same backwards walk. I braked hard without thinking. He stopped too, standing still as stone in my headlights. Slowly, he turned around. His face? God help me, it wasn't right. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Like a mask left too long in the sun, features melted down to shadows. Eyes like pits with nothing inside. Mouth hanging open just enough to show teeth, but not enough to call a smile. He raised one hand, waved at me. I threw the car in reverse and damn near spun out trying to get away from him. Headlights caught him one last time, stepping forward now, not backwards anymore. Coming toward me, slow and sure. Like he knew I couldn't outrun what was already behind me. I don't remember the drive home. Not really, just flashes. The dashboard clock spinning too fast, my hands shaking on the wheel. My heart somewhere down in my gut, punching to get out. Haven't touched that road since. Won't, but I still hear about him. A girl from Bandera said she saw him last month. A trucker passing through said he saw a man in black walking backwards all the way from Medina to Leakey. Sheriff says it's kids making up stories, trying to keep the legend alive. But there's too many wrecks on that stretch. Too many people who vanish with no reason. Me. I believe every word, because here's the thing nobody tells you. Once you see him, really see him, he starts showing up closer to home. I see him sometimes now, just out past my porch light, moving slow across the yard, walking backwards toward the tree line, heel to toe, never looking at me. Not yet, but he's getting closer, and sooner or later, I think he's going to stop and turn and wave. Nobody drove that stretch of desert highway west of Marfa after midnight unless they had a damn good reason. A flat tire on the wrong shoulder out there meant you'd sweat to death or freeze to death depending on the time of year. And either way you'd be alone with the dust and the coyotes until someone noticed you were gone. It wasn't a place built for people, and it sure as hell wasn't a place made for spirits either, though there were plenty who'd argue otherwise. The locals didn't talk much about the burnt man, not to outsiders anyway, not unless they'd been drinking too hard or hadn't slept in a few nights. But if you stayed long enough, worked in Marfa, ate at the Dairy Queen or the Blue Javelina long enough, you'd hear whispers. A blackened man on the side of the road, sometimes limping, sometimes waving, always asking for a ride. Folks said he'd been trying to get home since Eisenhower was in office. Problem was, wherever home was, it sure as hell wasn't anywhere. A man could drive him. I hadn't thought about any of that when I left the motel that night. Just another run, just another drive. I was heading east toward Alpine, hauling a load of air conditioning units in a rusted-out box truck I'd been driving for 7 years too long. My dispatch said deliver by 8 a.m., and I wasn't about to lose another bonus because I'd stopped to sleep. So I hit the road, didn't even look at the gas gauge. The desert at night plays tricks on you. Lights in the distance that don't belong to anything. Shapes in the scrub brush that move against the wind. It messes with your head, makes you Feel like maybe you're the last living person left on Earth and everyone else has gone off without telling you. I had the radio on low, some tinny AM station bleating out old country songs half swallowed by static, and my headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through the dust. That's when I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder just past a busted mile. Marker, one arm raised halfway like he couldn't quite decide if he was hitchhiking or surrendering. At first, I thought he was wearing some kind of heavy black coat, maybe one of those oil-filled coveralls, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't clothing at all. His skin was charred, black and gray, and peeling in long strips like the bark off a burned tree. His head was bare, skull gleaming through patches where flesh had given up the fight. His mouth hung open like he might say something, but nothing came out. I passed him without stopping. I'm not an idiot. Thing is, about a quarter-mile down the road, the engine sputtered. The lights dimmed. The radio died in a wheeze of static. I coasted to the shoulder, thinking it had to be the alternator finally giving up the ghost. I popped the hood, stepped out with my flashlight. That's when I smelled it. Smoke. Not fresh smoke, not like a cigarette or a grass fire. Old smoke. The smell of wood beams and bodies and gasoline all burnt together into one oily permanent stink. I swung the light around and there he was, standing not 10 feet behind the truck, hand still raised. "I need a ride," he rasped. That's all he said. I don't remember deciding to let him in. I don't even remember walking to the passenger side and unlocking the door. But the next thing I knew, he was climbing up, one stiff leg at a time, moving like his bones didn't quite fit together anymore. He sat down heavy and shut the door without looking at me. The cab filled up with that awful burnt smell. I could see him clearer now under the dome light. No eyes, not really, just dark pits sunk deep into the ruined meat of his face. His hands curled black and clawed in his lap. He didn't turn his head, didn't blink. Just stared out the windshield. "Drive?" he said, so I did. The truck started without complaint. The headlights flared bright as noon. The radio came back on, only now it wasn't country music. Just voices, whispering fast and soft in a language I didn't know, like a recording played backward underwater. I didn't touch the dial. I didn't ask where we were going. I just kept my hands at 10 and 2 and my foot steady on the gas. The road stretched on ahead of us, but something about it felt wrong. Like I wasn't on Highway 90 anymore. The stars above looked twisted, smeared across the sky in shapes that hurt my eyes if I tried to follow them. The moon hung low and red and mean. The scrub brush had given way to blackened fields, nothing growing, nothing alive. Telephone poles leaned at angles that made no sense. Some of them still had bodies. Hanging from the crossbars, burned skeletons swaying slow like pendulums. "You been driving long?" he asked. His voice sounded like paper tearing. I didn't answer. You see a lot out here. Wrecks, fires, bad things left behind on the pavement. I've been seeing it too long, I think. Too long. He turned his head a little toward me, and I thought I saw something squirming in the hollow of his throat, something wet and pale trying to crawl out. You ever wonder what's waiting at the end of the road? I didn't want to know. The truck kept moving. Faster now. Faster than an old box truck had any right to move. The speedometer ticked up past 80, past 90, past numbers it wasn't built to show. The headlights carved a path through empty space. Nothing but dark on either side, and still those voices on the radio whispered, faster and louder, until they weren't voices at all but screams. 1,000 people burning alive all at once. You shouldn't have stopped, he said, though I didn't remember stopping. You shouldn't have let me in, but you did. And now we both finished the ride. I wanted to slam the brakes. I wanted to pull the wheel hard and roll us into a ditch. But my hands wouldn't move. My feet wouldn't move. I wasn't driving anymore. I was just sitting there, watching the road peel itself open ahead of us like a wound. Up ahead, something waited, a shape bigger than any building, any mountain. Black and burning, stitched together from smoke and bone and hate. Its mouth hung open wide enough to swallow the sky, and inside was nothing but fire. "That's where I'm going," he said. "That's where you're going too." The truck drove straight in without slowing down. They found the box truck too. Days later, empty and clean, no cargo, no driver, no sign of a struggle. The engine was fine. The gas tank full. Only thing wrong was the smell inside. Burnt meat and old smoke, soaked into the seats like it had always been there. Folks around Marfa don't talk much about the burnt man anymore. But sometimes, if you're driving late at night and the desert gets real quiet, you might see someone standing on the shoulder, waving you down, blackened, smoking, asking for a ride. Don't stop, just keep driving, no matter what. It always started the same way, with a story passed along at bars, truck stops, and border checkpoints. Someone's cousin, someone's friend, someone's brother-in-law who swore up and down they saw them, those strange, silent lights floating. Over the old bridge at Laredo, the one nobody uses anymore unless they're drunk, lost or desperate to shave 10 minutes off a long drive south. Nobody agrees on the color. Some say white, like floodlights pointed down from nowhere. Some say blue, like police cruisers idling in the mist. Some say green, sickly, and pale, like something leaking out of a wound in the sky. But everybody agrees on one thing. When you see them, you don't go looking. Of course, this being Texas, plenty of people go looking anyway. It was July when Marco Garza first heard about the lights. He was sitting in his truck behind a Mexican restaurant off Mines Road, too hot to sleep, too drunk to drive home, just watching the glow of traffic from I-35 like a man watching the slow approach of something he couldn't stop. His buddy Felix was in the passenger seat, halfway through a bottle of something brown and mean. You know about that bridge out past the rail yard? The one heads toward the old cattle pens? Felix said it like he was just remembering it himself. Lights out there. Been happening a lot lately. Kids go looking, don't come back. Marco laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was bullshit. What kids? Young ones, stupid ones. Same kind we used to be. Never heard of it. Course you didn't. That's how it stays quiet. The ones who come back don't talk right no more. Cops won't say shit. You think they want folks knowing there's something bad on this side of the river that ain't cartel? Marco didn't answer because the heat was creeping up under his skin, making his scalp itch, and he didn't like the way Felix was looking past him into the dark. Like he was seeing something coming through the windshield that Marco couldn't. That night, Marco went home and couldn't sleep. He thought about bridges, how they hold things up, how they let things pass. How sometimes they just rot where they stand, left behind when the world moves on. The next night he drove out there, not because he believed, but because he didn't. Not really. And because there's a part of every man that wants to see the light for himself, you had to know where to turn. Past the grain silos, down a strip of cracked asphalt that used to be a road, but now looked more like a scar across the earth. Fence. Wire leaned in tired loops where cattle hadn't roamed in 20 years. The bridge was still standing, but barely, a ribbon of concrete sagging over what looked like nothing at all. Beneath it, the dry bed of a nameless arroyo collected trash, snakes, bones bleached white by a sun too big for this place. Marco killed the engine. Sat there smoking, listening to cicadas grinding their teeth into the heat. He waited. Nothing happened. Then he heard them. Voices. Not loud, not close. Just there, leaking up out of the cracked earth like gas through stone. Not Spanish, not English. Nothing he could name. He got out of the truck, walked to the bridge. The air smelled burned, like wires cooking behind a wall. He didn't remember stepping onto the concrete, but suddenly he was halfway across. His feet knew the way before his head caught up. That's how these things worked out above him. Lights, not hovering, not floating, hanging, like fruit from a tree he couldn't see. Pale green like bruises just starting to bloom. They didn't move, didn't blink, didn't hum or pulse. They just hung there, quiet as the grave. The whispers got louder. He thought of something his mother used to tell him when he was small, about brujas who could peel your soul right out of your chest if you listened too long to the wrong voice in the dark. He thought of the Rio Grande running slick and black just a few miles off, and how the water there ate bodies without leaving a trace. He thought of the way the ground felt soft under his boots now, as if the bridge itself was sinking. He should have turned back, but the lights pulled at something in him. Something hollow and aching. He didn't see what came next, not clearly. Shapes in the lights. Figures bending in ways no bones allowed. Faces without mouths. Eyes that weren't eyes at all. Just holes where light bled through. They came from the air, from the cracks in the concrete, from under his feet, rising up slow like smoke from something burning below. Marco tried to scream. Nothing worked. When he woke, it was dawn. His truck was gone. His phone was gone. His wallet too. He walked back to town on feet that didn't feel like his own, skin humming like he'd been sitting too close to a transformer all night. He didn't tell anyone, not right away, but word got around. People noticed how he stared at lights too long now, even daylight ones. How he flinched when crossing bridges, even little ones, even culverts with barely a trickle beneath. Felix found him one night sitting on a bar stool, not drinking, just watching his own reflection in a glass he wouldn't lift. "You went, didn't you?" Felix said. Marco didn't answer. Just nodded, slow. "What did you see?" Marco smiled. Not because it was funny, but because there was nothing else left in him to do. "You'll see." Felix went out there the next night. They never found him. Just his truck, door hanging open, keys still in the ignition. Battery dead. And tire tracks leading halfway across the bridge before they just stopped, like something had picked the whole goddamn truck up and carried it off into the sky. They say if you stand on that bridge long enough, you'll hear them. Voices low and crawling under the hum of the lights. If you listen, they say, you'll understand, not what they're saying. What? They want. And if you understand that, well, nobody comes back right after that. Nobody comes back whole. It was just past 2 in the morning when Luke Harlan pulled his aging Ford pickup off the I-10 and into the cracked, dimly lit lot of a forgotten rest stop somewhere east of Beaumont. The place looked like it hadn't been cleaned or cared for in decades, the kind of place truckers avoided, where vending machines stood empty and the lights inside the bathroom flickered as if possessed by something old and tired. Luke wasn't thinking about hauntings, though. He was thinking about coffee, his aching back, and the storm crawling its way across the sky behind him. He'd been on the road 14 hours hauling reclaimed lumber from Houston toward Lake Charles, trying to make up time after a busted fan belt left him sweating on the shoulder most of the afternoon. His eyes felt gritty, his stomach hollow, and his bladder impatient. So he pulled in, shut off the engine, and let the silence swallow him. It was that kind of silence. Thick, buzzing, unnatural, the kind that comes with too much humidity and not enough human life. There wasn't another vehicle in sight. Not in the lot. Not on the stretch of interstate that hissed somewhere behind the trees. No other lights but the sodium orange glow of the lampposts and the faint green exit sign hanging crooked at the turnoff. Luke climbed down stiffly, stretched his back, and walked toward the building. That's when he heard it, faint at first. A sound like someone crying. A woman by the sound of it. muffled but clear enough to send a trickle of unease crawling up the back of his neck. He slowed, peering around the corner of the squat, windowless structure. His boots scraped against loose gravel, loud in the dead air. In the farthest shadowed corner of the lot, almost hidden behind a sagging dumpster, she crouched. A woman, alone. She was facing the concrete wall, arms wrapped around her knees, shoulders, shaking with quiet sobs. Her hair was dark, long, wet-looking. He couldn't see her face. Luke stood there a moment, chewing the inside of his cheek. You hear stories about setups at lonely places like this. Crying girls meant to lure the soft-hearted, the stupid, into traps. Guys hiding nearby with tire irons and worse, but there was something off about this one. Something that didn't fit the usual bad news mold. Ma'am, you okay? His voice sounded too loud in the heat. She didn't react at first. Just kept crying, soft and slow like something leaking through a crack. He took a step closer. Hey now, you need help, or... The crying stopped. Abrupt. The woman moved then, not standing exactly, but unfolding. Rising in a way that seemed wrong, like her limbs weren't working off the same rules as his. She turned. Luke couldn't see her face. Her hair hung like wet ropes, plastered over pale skin, but he could smell her. A sharp, chemical stink riding the air between them. Gasoline, and beneath it, the rich black scent of wet earth, fresh dug. Ma'am? Nothing. She looked at him without eyes he could make out. Just shadows beneath the hair, then she stepped back. One step, two, into the wall behind her. Not beside it, not around it. Into it. Like smoke pulled through a crack in reality. Gone. The night swallowed her, and Luke Harlan stood alone again, his heart hammered slow and stupid in his chest. He ran a hand over his face, over the stubble and sweat. Jesus, he muttered, but it didn't feel like prayer. The smell lingered. Stronger now. Gasoline and dirt mingled with something sour like old rain. He turned and walked back to his truck faster than he meant to, his boots skidding a little on the loose gravel. The driver's side door creaked when he yanked it open. He climbed in, slammed it shut, locked it without thinking. Headlights on. Engine rumbling to life like a dog woken from a bad dream. As he pulled out, he looked one last time toward the corner behind the building. Nothing there. No woman. No shadow. Just a dark stain spreading slow beneath the dumpster. An oily puddle that hadn't been there before. He didn't stop again until the sun was up and the world looked normal again. Later, over coffee that tasted like hot mud in a diner full of tired men, he told himself it had been exhaustion, a trick of nerves stretched too thin. Maybe fumes from his own leaky fuel line messing with his head. He told himself that. Repeated it, but weeks later, when he passed through Beaumont again, he heard another driver talking about the rest stop. You know the one, the man said. Eastbound side. Nothing but trees around it. Ain't on the maps anymore. They say a woman burned herself up there years back. Doused in gas, lit herself right there behind the dumpster. Took hours for anyone to notice. Rain washed her down. Into the dirt. Still shows up sometimes, crying like she wants somebody to pull her out. Luke didn't say anything. Just stirred his coffee slow. He thought about that smell. Thick in his nose still, gasoline, wet soil, and something beneath. It all. Something waiting. Next trip through, he took the long way around. You don't notice him at first. That's the trick of it. You're driving late, maybe somewhere between Laredo and the long nothing north of Uvalde, pushing up along that flat black ribbon of US 83. Middle of the night. Middle of nowhere. The kind of night where your headlights only seem to carve out more darkness than light, and your high beams catch nothing but fence posts and scrub brush that huddle like old men whispering secrets to each other under the moon. you're tired. More tired than you want to admit. The road's been the same for hours. 2 lanes, faded white lines, mile after mile of asphalt stitched like thread through the hide of some dead and endless country. And that's when he's there off the shoulder, maybe 30 yards from the ditch, standing so still he might as well have grown there from the dirt. He's got a cowboy hat pulled low, one of those old ones, sun-bleached and sweat-stained, like something passed down from father to son across 100 years of hard living. His shirt's white, or used to be, but it's torn at the shoulder, and smeared dark across the front with something that looks too thick and too old to be anything but blood. He raises his hand. Not fast, slow, like a man who knows you'll see him sooner or later. Like he's not in any rush because he's been waiting out there a long time. It's a wave. That's all. You don't wave back. Not the first time. Not the second. Not. If you've heard the stories the truckers talk about him when the coffee's run out, and the nights stretch too thin between towns. Old-timers mostly. The ones with leathery skin and 1,000-yard stares who've driven this road more times than they can count. They say he's been out there since before the highway was paved, since back when it was wagon trails and cattle drives, and maybe even before that. Some folks claim he's just a mirage, heat off the road gone sour in the dark. Others reckon he's something older, something mean. They'll tell you this much, though, everyone agrees on it. If you see him and you wave, you won't make it where you're going. Not ever. No one agrees on how it happens. Some say you'll blow a tire and skid off into a ravine, or run out of gas in a stretch where no one stops and the heat kills you slow. Some say you'll vanish altogether, pulled right off the road and into whatever thin place he's waving from, never to be seen again. A few whisper that if you wave back, you'll live, sure enough. You'll reach your destination eventually. But it won't be the one you thought. It'll be a place that looks like home, smells like home, wears the skin of the world you knew, but under it, everything's wrong. Twisted just a hair off true. People you love looking through you with. Strangers' eyes. Roads that don't lead anywhere. Clocks that don't keep time right. A forever kind of wrong. You didn't believe any of that, not really. Not until tonight, because tonight, you're watching him through your windshield. Watching the way his hand moves in that slow, steady arc. Watching how he doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, doesn't shift his feet or hunch his shoulders against the wind. Just stands there with blood on his chest and something hollow in the tilt of his head. Like a question he's been asking too long without an answer. You keep driving. Miles slide under your tires. But they don't feel right, like the roads. Stretching out longer than it should, like you're moving but not going anywhere. You check the clock, the radio, the gas gauge. All fine. All wrong. The clock says it's only been 20 minutes since you passed him, but the sky hasn't budged. Still pinned black and starless overhead. Still holding its breath like it's waiting for something. Another 10 miles. Another 20. You see him again. Same man, same bloody shirt, same lazy wave, slow as a dying song. You don't wave, you don't even look too long, but you feel something cold ripple under your skin, down through your bones, like a voice whispered right into the meat of you. Not done yet. Your hands sweat on the wheel. Your teeth ache. You keep going. It happens again and again. Doesn't matter how fast you drive, how long you push through the dark. Doesn't matter if you kill the headlights and crawl forward on instinct, praying he won't see you this time. He's there. Always there. Same man, same hat, same ruin of a shirt. Each time he's closer to the road. Each time his hand lifts a little slower. Each time you feel the pull of him like a hook sunk deep into the soft, secret places inside you. Somewhere along the way, the mile markers vanish. The fences give up pretending they're holding anything back. The scrub brush turns pale, brittle, the shapes of them leaning in toward the road like they're listening. Waiting. Your phone won't find a signal. Your GPS spins dumb and blind, circling some black heart of nowhere with no way out. You tell yourself you're dreaming. You tell yourself you're tired. That's all. You've driven too long. Let the road eat away at your sense of things. You'll pull over soon. You'll close your eyes. You'll wake up somewhere real. But ahead, in the wash of your brights, he's standing dead center in the lane, hat low. Shirt dark, hand rising. You can't stop. You don't stop. You steer wide, wheels biting gravel as you swing past him, breath caught sharp behind your teeth. You don't look in the mirror. You don't want to see if he's still waving, but you do. Of course you do, and you wave back. Maybe. It's reflex. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's some old, mean part of you answering something older and meaner in him. Doesn't matter. Your hand lifts. You wave. The moment passes like smoke in your throat. The road ahead isn't the one you knew. The signs were names you don't recognize. The sky's wrong. A swollen, rust-colored smear where the moon should be. You drive on. You'll keep driving. Maybe forever. Because wherever you were going, you'll never get there now. But you'll see him again. Soon. Waving. Always waving. He first saw the kid just outside of Terlingua, where the desert flattens out like the palm of God's hand and the sun never seems to really set. It just bruises the sky purple and sags down behind the rocks like an old drunk giving up. Gary wasn't supposed to be out that way. His wife had told him not to take the job hauling equipment that far south. Said it wasn't worth the extra pay. Wasn't worth crossing those long miles of nothing with just a CB and static for company. But money's money, and Gary had debts. So he took the contract. Hauled a trailer full of busted oil field gear from Midland to Presidio. Figured he'd loop past Big Bend just to see the park again. One last time maybe. It was dusk when he saw the kid. A toddler. Couldn't have been older than 3. Standing dead center of the cracked asphalt road alone, in that stretch of emptiness between Study Butte and the edges of the park where even the jackrabbits look half-starved. No car nearby. No buildings, not even tire tracks but his own. Just this little thing in a dirty blue onesie, crying without sound, mouth open wide, tears cutting lines through the dust on its face. Gary braked hard enough to jolt his coffee into his lap. His first thought wasn't ghosts or devils or anything supernatural. His first thought was, somebody's lost their baby. He killed the engine, climbed down slow, cautious, kept one hand on the door because something about the scene felt wrong. In that deep down animal way you don't argue with. "Hey, buddy," he called. His voice sounded strange out there, like it didn't want to carry. "You okay? Where's your folks?" The kid didn't move. Just stood there, tiny fists clenched at its sides, chest hitching like it couldn't catch its breath. Gary stepped. Closer, boot solace crunching gravel, sweat slick on the back of his neck though the air had cooled. A few more steps and the kid blinked up at him, wide, dark eyes like little wet marbles. For a second, Gary thought they didn't look right. Too big for the face. Too empty. He blinked and the kid was gone, not ran. Not ducked into the brush, just gone. One heartbeat standing there crying. Next heartbeat empty road stretching ahead like it always had been. Gary whipped his head around, scanned the mesquite. And the scrubby hillsides, the low shadows yawning between boulders. Nothing. No footprints in the dust. No rustle of movement. Just the rasp of wind and the tick of his cooling engine, and then he realized something was watching him. It wasn't the kid. Whatever it was, it sat low in the brush to his left, crouched behind a tangled nest of dry ocotillo. And thorn. He couldn't see it outright, not a shape exactly, but he could feel it there, like the way you feel the heat off a fire even if you're blind. A watching, awaiting, hungry. It had eyes. Not like headlights or flashlights, nothing that clear. Just two soft pits of blackness deeper than the night gathering behind the rocks. Gary's breath hitched in his chest. Old Smoker's lungs gone tight. He took a step back toward his truck, slow as prayer, not wanting to break whatever spell was holding it still. Something in the brush shifted. Not big, but deliberate. A hand? A claw? He couldn't say. Only that the kid had been a lure. Bait. He made it back into the cab, slammed the door, locked it without thinking. The headlights caught the brush. Nothing there. Nothing at all. He sat there breathing hard, watching the mirrors, fingers clenched. So tight on the wheel his knuckles went bloodless. The road ahead lay empty. The desert behind, emptier still. He thought about calling it in, reporting a missing kid or some weird desert prank, but who the hell would he call? Sheriff's office wouldn't do much after dark way out here. Besides, what could he say? Saw a baby. Baby disappeared. Felt something watching me. They'd laugh him back to Midland. He drove. Kept driving until the sun burned up over the rocks. Again, and the gas gauge hovered low. Slept in his truck with the windows up and the doors. Locked outside an abandoned gas station with the pumps rusted down to skeletons. Days later, back in Midland, he mentioned it in passing to an old boy at the yard, a roustabout who'd done time near the border. The guy went pale under his tan, made a sign of the cross without irony. Said there's stories down that way? Things in the desert that wear skins sometimes, try to call you off the road. Crying babies, hurt women, lost old men. Never real. Never human. Just something with teeth behind the face. Gary quit long-haul runs after that. Stuck to local work. Never went south. Again, never east toward Terlingua, not even for a wedding. He told himself it was superstition, nerves, heat stroke maybe. Told himself a lot of things. But sometimes, in the middle of a night too still for Midland, he'd wake from some half-dream with the sound of crying in his ears. Small, childlike, coming from the road, just beyond his house where no child should be. He never went to look. Not anymore. And in the mornings, the gravel by his driveway would show footprints. Too small to be his, too fresh to be old, always facing the house, never away. It was around midnight when Carter Phelps first saw her. He'd been on the road too long already, pushing through that black stretch of Highway 59 south of Lufkin, trying to make it down to Houston before dawn. The world outside his windshield was just a blur of pine trees and old fence posts leaning like drunk old men into the ditches. He hadn't passed another car in half an hour, and the only lights were his own headlights cutting the dark to ribbons. He almost didn't notice her. At first, just a shape standing there on the shoulder, halfway between the road and the trees. His brights caught the pale outline of a dress, something long and stained and flapping slow in the breeze like a curtain in a broken window. For a second he thought it was a deer, the way the shape just stood there stiff and waiting. But no, it wasn't an animal. It was a woman standing barefoot in the gravel with her head bowed down and her face completely obscured by a swarm of black flies. He drove right past her. His hands tightened on the wheel. For a heartbeat or two, he thought about stopping, thought about backing up and asking if she needed help. But something deep in his gut said, don't you dare. Don't. You even slow down. He'd heard stories about Highway 59, stories about the girl who waved you down and led you into the trees, about the old man who walked backward along the white line with no eyes in his head. Carter didn't believe in ghost stories. Not really. But he'd also learned not to fuck around with things he didn't understand. He kept going. But as the miles crawled by, his mind kept circling back to her. The flies. That was the part he couldn't shake. Not just a few, but a cloud. Thick and moving, buzzing so loud he'd heard it through his closed window. Covering her hair, her face, even her hands where they hung limp at her sides. How could someone stand there like that and not move, not scream, not swat them away? Maybe she's not alive, something in him whispered. 20 minutes later, his headlights picked up another figure ahead. Same side of the road, same white dress. Same cloud of black flies eating at her face. His stomach flipped over. He'd been driving straight, no turnoffs, no intersections, no towns. How the hell had she gotten ahead of him? He pressed harder on the gas, watching the speedometer creep past 70, then 80. The road stretched on and on in that dead black way Texas highways do, like a line drawn by a blind god across nothing. But she was there again, 10 miles later, standing on the shoulder, swaying slightly as though the weight of all those flies was dragging her down. This time she raised a hand when he passed, palm smeared with something dark. He thought maybe it was dirt at first. Then he realized it was blood. Carter felt his scalp go cold. He didn't stop. Not even when his fuel light blinked on, not even when his bladder started screaming at him for a break. He kept going because he knew with the same deep certainty as his own name that if he stopped, she'd come for him. Not running, not fast, just walking slow and steady toward his door until she pressed that filthy hand against the glass and left her mark behind. And he'd heard somewhere from someone that those handprints don't come off. Not ever. Not soap, not bleach, not fire. They stay. They stain. And if you've got them on your car, you've got her. She follows. She waits. She finds you when you're alone. At the next gas station, miles down the road where the lights flickered. Pale over broken pumps and a dog barked somewhere unseen, Carter pulled in. He didn't need gas anymore. He just needed to breathe. To stand on solid ground. To piss in a cracked bathroom and splash cold water on his face. He did all that. Then he came back to his truck. That's when he saw it, right there on the driver's side window, 4 long fingers and the drag of a thumb. Dark, oily, sticky looking. Not fresh, not old. Like something dead had pressed its hand there and left behind a piece of itself. His heart jumped sideways in his chest. He tried wiping it off with his sleeve. Didn't budge. He tried spit on his fingers. Nothing. He got out a pack of wet wipes. From the glove compartment, scrub it until the paper shredded under his nails. Still there. Still perfect. Still humming with a kind of quiet menace. A trucker filling up 2 bays over gave him a look. "Everything all right, buddy?" Carter forced a laugh. "Yeah. Bug smear. Won't come off." The trucker nodded, but his face said he wasn't buying it. "Lot of weird shit on this road," he said. "Best keep moving. Don't stop till you hit Houston." Carter got back in. Drove. Fast now. Faster than he should have through those empty miles. Trees blurred. Past. Signs blurred past. His headlights caught nothing but night and asphalt and sometimes the glint of old barbed wire. And sometimes her. Not just on the side anymore. In the road. Standing right in his path. Making him swerve, making him grip the wheel so tight his knuckles hurt. Always with that cloud of flies, thicker now, like smoke pouring out of her skin. He couldn't see her face for them. Just the hint of teeth beneath the buzzing. Just the wet shine of her handprint reaching for his window. He stopped seeing her after a while. Or maybe she stopped letting him see. Maybe once she's touched your glass, there's no need anymore for her to show herself. Maybe she's in the back seat now. Or hanging on under the truck. Waiting. By the time Carter rolled into Houston, the sky was beginning to pink at the edges. He pulled into a hotel lot, shaking, exhausted, needing sleep more than he'd ever needed it in his life. He left the truck under the streetlight. The print was still there. He thought about going to the clerk, asking if they had something, anything, that could clean it. But what would he say? What could he possibly explain? He checked in. Went to his room, locked the door, pulled the curtains, didn't sleep. Somewhere around 3, he thought he heard buzzing. Not outside, inside. Faint at first, like something caught in the wall. Then louder, then closer, until it sounded like it was right beside the bed. He didn't turn on the light. He didn't move. He just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. He didn't drive back up 59, ever again. Didn't tell anyone what happened either, because he figured if you tell it, you make it stronger. You spread it, but still. Years later, sometimes he'd come out to his truck and there it was. A fresh print on the window, slick, black, buzzing faintly in the quiet air. FM 1093 cuts through the backroads west of Houston like a forgotten scar, stretching through old farmland, broken fences, and fields that haven't seen crops in years. It's the kind of road that looks endless at night, two thin yellow lines. Swallowed up by shadows, nothing but barbed wire and rusted-out silos keeping you company for miles. Some folks take it to avoid the tolls, some to avoid the cops. But everyone who's lived out there long enough knows you don't drive FM 1093 after midnight. Not unless you've got no other choice. It usually starts the same way. The road's empty. Maybe some fog licking at the ditches. You're driving. Maybe tired, maybe half lost, radio low, or off completely. Then, from out of nowhere, headlights pop up behind you. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just there. A truck. Always an old pickup. Sometimes folks say it's red. Others swear it's green. Or black, but all agree on one thing: it looks wrong. Not falling apart wrong, just ... out of place. Too clean for this road. Too quiet for a truck that old. The driver? He's always the same too. Middle-aged, weathered face like he's been sunburnt for 20 years straight. Big teeth behind. A crooked smile like he's trying real hard to look friendly and just missing the mark. And he always leans out the window no matter how fast you're going, no matter how locked your doors are, and calls out, voice calm like a breeze sneaking under your collar. Need a ride? That's what happened to Jeremy Ross late October. He was coming back from his girlfriend's place in Fulshire, took 1093 instead of the highway. It was past 1 a.m. The moon was a thin fingernail, and Jeremy had been fighting sleep since Brookshire. He told his buddy later that it felt like time was stretching, like the road just wouldn't end. Then came the headlights, soft at first. He thought it was just someone in a hurry, maybe a farmer or someone heading home late. Then the truck pulled up beside him, matched his speed exactly. That's when Jeremy saw him. Driver leaned half out the window like he didn't care about the wind, that wide smile splitting his face like a cracked pumpkin. And before Jeremy could even process it, the man called out, "Need a ride?" Jeremy slammed the gas, tried to shake him, but the truck didn't fall back. It just ... wasn't there anymore. Like it had blinked out. Poof. Gone. But not for long. 2 miles later, Jeremy passed a busted windmill on the left and saw the truck again parked on the shoulder. Engine off, like it had been waiting for him. The guy was outside this time, standing by the passenger door, thumb out like a hitchhiker. Same too-wide smile. Same dead stare. Jeremy flew past him, heart hammering. That night, he drove straight through to Katy, parked under a gas station. Light, and waited till the sun came up before going home. But not everyone gets away that clean. Cassie Del Tura, 19, took FM 1093 after her shift at a Whataburger in Eagle Lake. That was last February. She never made it home. Cops found her car in a ditch off the 1093 shoulder near an old feed store door open. Engine running, lights off. No signs of struggle. No blood. Her phone, purse, and keys were all inside. But no Cassie. A local rancher told deputies he'd seen an old pickup idling by the road around 2 a.m. that night. Said it looked too clean for a working truck, but figured the guy was hunting feral hogs. He didn't think much of it until the missing posters went up. What haunts folks out there isn't just the vanishings. It's the people who don't disappear. The ones who come back ... different. Take Glenn Meadows, for example, 62. Lived in Simonton all his life. He'd never been much for ghost stories, thought they were city people nonsense, as he put it. But 2 years ago, his truck broke down late one night between Orchard and Fulshire. He was walking toward a gas station when the pickup pulled up beside him. He told his niece later that the driver didn't say a word, just smiled. That same stretched-out grin. Glenn said no, said it firm. The truck drove off without a sound, but Glenn didn't make it to the gas station. A passing deputy found him an hour later standing in the middle of the road, barefoot, staring into the dark like he was watching something no one else could see. Wouldn't speak, wouldn't move. Just kept whispering, "He ain't behind the wheel. He is the wheel." Glenn never fully came back from whatever he saw. He sits in a chair now at a care home in Rosenberg, mumbling to himself, eyes wide and dry, rocking like he's stuck on repeat. It's not every night you'll see the truck. Not every driver. Some folks drive 1093 for years and never spot a thing, but others ... They don't get a choice. That's what happened to Dale Harkness, 45, insurance adjuster. Took the road one rainy night after a client meeting ran long. Just past the intersection near Woods Road, the truck appeared behind him. Dale wasn't superstitious. Thought it was just some backwoods creeper. So when the pickup pulled alongside and the man shouted, "Need a ride?" Dale flipped him off and kept going. That's when the rain got worse. Harder than it had any right to be. Like buckets. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and Dale's wipers couldn't keep up. He slowed to a crawl, trying to see. When the truck reappeared up ahead, parked across the road, blocking both lanes, Dale barely had time to react. He swerved, went off into the ditch, and hit a tree hard enough to deploy the airbags. Cops found him 10 minutes later, dazed with a nasty gash on his forehead. But what got them spooked wasn't the accident. It was Dale's injuries. He had bruises on both arms, hand-shaped, like someone had grabbed him and tried to pull him out of the car. And on the inside of the windshield, in the fogged-up glass, they found words written by a finger from the inside of the cab. Just 3 words. "You're already riding. No prints." No footprints outside. Nothing. No one knows what he is, the man in the truck. Some say he's a ghost of someone killed on 1093 decades ago. Others think he's older than the road, older than cars, maybe not even human at all. A spirit that rides the highways at night, looking for the next person to offer a ride to, whether they want it or not. But the worst story I ever heard came from a guy named Travis Kemp. Used to do long-haul deliveries, Houston to Austin. One night, he picked up a load late, figured he'd take the back roads and cut time. He saw the truck around 12:30 a.m. Same deal pulled up beside him like it had no problem keeping up. The man leaned out, grinning. "Need a ride?" Travis laughed it off at first, said out loud, "I'm already driving, dumbass." But then something changed. The cab got cold, real cold. Breath fog on the glass cold. And the steering wheel ... He said it stopped responding, not locked, not stiff, just ... Loose, like it wasn't connected to anything anymore. Then the headlights ahead showed something impossible. He was sitting in the passenger seat, himself, staring back at him, smiling. Travis blacked out. When he woke up, it was noon the next day. His truck was parked neatly in front of a diner in Wharton. Engine off. No damage. No memory of driving there. Just the echo of that voice in his head, whispering over and over. You're always riding with me. You just forget sometimes. These days, Travis won't go near a country road. Won't drive past dark. Moved to a small apartment in downtown Houston, takes the bus everywhere. Says at least in the city, the man in the truck can't follow him. But sometimes, late at night, he swears he sees headlights on the street below. Old headlights, waiting, smiling, and always asking, need a ride? There's a stretch of Highway 287 between Wichita Falls and Childress that runs long and lonely through cattle country, where the fields roll flat and brown into the horizon and the sky hangs big and empty like a threat. That's the kind of place where stories get told, not because people are liars, but because the land out there feels too wide to hold just the living. That highway runs straight as a loaded gun, and folks say if you drive it late enough, tired enough, with your headlights catching nothing but roadkill and dust, you might pick up a passenger you didn't mean to. People who knew better warned me. My uncle used to drive freight that way, hauling refrigerators or tires, whatever paid. He told me about a man he picked up once out near Esteline, just standing there on the shoulder like he'd been planted in the dirt. No bag, no wallet. No nothing. Looked like he hadn't eaten in weeks, thin as barbed wire and pale as fog. My uncle said he shouldn't have stopped. He knew better. But something about the guy's face made it hard to keep going. Saw he was headed home, but never said where home was. The whole ride, he never spoke more than that. And the radio, which had been playing George Jones just fine a minute before, turned to static and stayed there till the man was gone. My uncle never told me where he dropped him off. I think maybe he didn't know. I didn't believe that kind of story, not really. Not until I saw him for myself. It was July, blistering and breathless, and I'd been driving too long. Left Amarillo. After a family fight and too many beers and just wanted to put distance between me and all that noise. I figured I'd stop somewhere cheap for the night. Maybe Vernon if I made good time. The sky was already black as oil by the time I passed Electra. My headlights carved out this narrow cone of sight ahead of me, and everything beyond it just seemed to suck in light like a throat-swallowing water. Then I saw him. Thin man, standing dead center on the shoulder like he belonged there. No bag, no hat, no sign of sweat even in that heat. His thumb wasn't out. He just stood, staring at my approaching lights like he'd been waiting for me specifically. His clothes didn't make sense either. Slacks too clean for the dirt out there. Button-down shirt, sleeves rolled neat to the elbow. Shoes like he worked in an office somewhere air-conditioned, but his face was hollow, like the skin was barely stretched over the bones. Eyes set too deep in the sockets to catch the light right. I should have kept driving. Every sensible bone in my body told me to. But there's this thing that happens out on roads like that, where you've been alone too long and the silence makes you stupid. I slowed down, rolled the window halfway. You need a ride? I asked. He smiled, teeth straight and too white. I'm headed home. His voice was flat but polite, like someone answering the phone at a funeral home. I unlocked the door. I don't know why. I just did. He got in without a sound. Not the creak of the door, not the shift of weight on the seat, nothing. I glanced at the floor, no bag. His pockets didn't even bulge with keys or a wallet. Just sat there, hands folded neat in his lap, looking ahead. I checked the side mirror out of habit, and that's when my stomach turned over. No shadow. Moon was up, big and bright, throwing light clear through the cab of my truck and onto the gravel beyond. My shadow was there, slant and stretched behind the wheel like it ought to be. His seat stayed empty in the mirror, the upholstery catching moonlight but not him. I watched the mirror too long, nearly veered off the road, snapped my eyes forward. Again, he hadn't moved. "You from around here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He smiled again. "Not anymore." We passed a sign for Chillicothe, 30 miles of blacktop ahead. I flicked on the radio, needing noise, needing something. It spat static at me, no matter the station. FM AM didn't matter, just hissing like a snake curling in my ear. I shut it off. The silence got heavier, like it had weight now, pressing into my chest. "You're headed home," I said, more to fill the space than anything. "Where's that?" "Where the road ends," he said. His head turned, slow and steady, until he was looking at me like he hadn't really seen me till now. His eyes weren't right. Too dark, like someone had painted the irises black and left. No room for light. His smile hung there, stiff as something nailed in place. "You'll see." The air in the cab went cold. Not cooler. Cold, like winter slipping under the door. My breath fogged faintly on the windshield. July heat still pressed against the glass, but inside felt like December. "You okay?" I asked, voice shaking. "Never better," he said. "Almost there." Outside, the road looked wrong. I don't know how else to say it. The lines blurred, the fences leaned in like they were watching. The moon hung too big, too low, bloated and red now like a wound left open. My headlights caught shapes between fence posts that didn't look like cattle. Too tall, too thin, moving wrong. I told myself to pull over. I told myself to let him out, turn around, head back to some diner with lights on and people awake. But my hands wouldn't move. Steering wheel locked straight ahead. His shadowless shape beside me, humming now under his breath. The road narrowed. Pavement crumbled at the edges like it had been forgotten, not maintained. Signs disappeared. No mile markers. No exits. Just this strip of black running straight into darkness. Then, in the distance, lights. Not headlights, not houses. A glow. Low and red, seeping up from the ground like something smoldering beneath the dirt. The man beside me straightened, pleased. "Home," he said again. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, tires screaming, gravel chewing under the wheels. When we stopped, I looked over, seat empty. Door closed. No footprints in the dirt. Nothing. Just the radio crackling static like laughter and a throat-gone horse. I turned that truck around. Didn't stop till I saw neon signs and gas stations and people again. Radio never worked right after that night. Always hissed when I got too far from town. They say you can still find him out there, somewhere between Wichita Falls and the edge of nowhere. Slim man, no bag, no ID, no shadow. Says he's headed home. If you give him a ride, your radio won't. Play music again till morning. If you're lucky. If not, well, maybe you'll find out where the road ends too. It always started the same way. A long stretch of Highway 77 somewhere between Corpus and Kingsville. After midnight, when the road felt thinner than it did during daylight, like it barely existed at all. The highway sat flat and dark beneath. The stars running straight as a blade through empty farmland and brush country. No lights except the faint red glow of taillights way ahead and the pale beams of your own headlights stabbing at the black. If you drove it enough, you started to recognize things that weren't supposed to be there. Things the daylight never showed you. People called it the laughing woman in the white car. Always a white sedan. Older model but clean, not a scratch on it. Paint shining bone pale even in the dark. It would slide up beside you, matching your speed perfectly, close enough you could glance over and see inside if you dared. Everyone who talked about it, truckers, night shift nurses, kids running late from Corpus back home to the valley, they all said the same thing. There was a woman in the driver's seat, Alone. She never touched the wheel. Her hands just floated there above it, useless, as if she didn't need them. Her mouth hung open too wide, grinning so hard you thought her face would split right down the middle, and from that mouth came laughter. Not loud enough to hear through your windows, not loud enough to drown out your radio or your own breathing, but you felt it. You felt it in your stomach like a sickness. You felt it prickle against the base of your skull. Even with your doors locked, you swore she was laughing right next to you. They said if you looked at her too long, if you matched her speed too long, she'd veer toward you. Not fast, just the slow, steady lean, like she had all the time in the world and knew you didn't. And right before she hit you, before the impact came, she'd vanish. Poof, like smoke in headlights. Sometimes you'd spin out trying to dodge her, end up in a ditch, shaking and cursing and maybe bleeding. Sometimes nothing happened at all and you just kept driving, heart hammering like fists against your ribs, staring at the empty stretch ahead and wondering how long you'd been watching her. Without realizing it, I never believed in that kind of thing until the night I saw her myself. I was driving back from San Antonio after dropping my little brother off at his dorm. It was late, later than I meant to be on the road, but traffic had been hell getting out of the city and I'd been too stubborn to stop at a motel. I figured I knew these roads. I'd done this stretch 100 times. Highway 77 southbound, open road, cruise control, coffee in the Q folder going lukewarm. About 15 miles past Refugio, things started to feel ... off. Hard to explain. The night felt heavier somehow. Like the dark pressing against the windows wasn't natural anymore, like it had weight and intention behind it. My headlights cut forward into nothing. No cars ahead, none behind. Just me, the engine hum, the white line peeling by mile after mile. I turned off the radio without thinking. Silence made the cabin feel tighter. Then I noticed the lights behind me, not headlights exactly. Not the usual twin points catching in the mirror. This was a smear of pale white light, like something low and slow sliding after me. I checked the mirror again and thought I saw a shape in it, square front, low to the ground, glint of chrome. A white car gaining fast. It pulled up beside me without warning. No sound of an engine overtaking mine, no glare of beams sweeping across my dash. 1 second I was alone. The next, she was there. White sedan, late 90s maybe. Clean as bone, windows down, no plates I could see. And inside, she wasn't beautiful. That's important to say. Not young, not old. Pale face, sharp chin, hair like brittle straw hanging limp over thin shoulders. Eyes open too wide, mouth open wider. Grinning like she knew the punchline to something you didn't, and laughing under her breath like it was crawling up from somewhere deep in her chest. Her hands hovered above the steering wheel, fingers twitching, like spider legs trying to find purchase. Not gripping, not guiding. Just there, suspended like something underwater. I couldn't look away. I should have. God knows I should have. But I kept pace with her, idiot curiosity burning colder than fear. 30 seconds, maybe less. Long enough to notice how her skin stretched wrong around her lips, how her teeth looked too small for that mouth, how her eyes didn't blink. Her car started drifting toward mine, inch by inch, steady as a needle sewing fabric. I snapped out of whatever dumb trance had me and hit the brakes. Hard. My tires screamed. My coffee flew into the dash and her car. Gone. Not ahead of me. Not behind. Not peeling off into the brush or down some hidden turnoff. Just not there anymore. The road stretched empty ahead, as blank and clean as it had been before she arrived. I pulled over, heart rattling my chest like a trapped thing. Sat there breathing hard, staring at my hands on the wheel, waiting for them to stop shaking. Another car passed me maybe 10 minutes later. A trucker, big rig humming steady past without so much as a glance. His taillights faded into the dark, and I felt something like sanity return. I told myself it had been exhaustion, road hypnosis, a trick of headlights and shadow. But when I finally made it home, when I stepped out into my driveway and stretched and tried to shake the night off me, I noticed something: fingerprints on the passenger side window. Pale smears where something had pressed open hands against the glass. Long fingers, too long. No palm prints, just streaks where the tips dragged slowly down, like she'd leaned in close, like she'd been looking at me from inches away while I stared straight ahead and pretended not to know. I scrubbed them off with bleach the next morning. Didn't help much. Every now and then, when the light hits the glass just right, I still see the ghost of them there, and I haven't driven Highway 77 at night since. Not once, not alone. But sometimes, when the house is quiet and the wind kicks up against the siding. Just wrong. I hear something. Laughter. Not loud. Not close. Not yet. The first time I saw him was on a long, lonely stretch of 287 heading north out of Amarillo sometime around midnight. I was driving back from a job in Lubbock, wired on gas station coffee and the last stale slice of a gas station sandwich, with nothing but the radio and the road ahead to keep me company. The highway out there runs through nothing flat. Endless cattle country where the wind tears across the plains without mercy and barbed wire fences lean tired against the sky. No towns, no houses. Just fence posts, telephone lines, and fields. Stretching out into forever. It was just before Claude when I noticed him. A man standing perfectly still in the middle of an open field. Nothing around him. No truck pulled over, no house or barn in the distance, not even a tree for cover. Just him and the night and the dry, waist-high grass that shimmered pale under the moon. I slowed down without really knowing why. Something about the way he stood caught at me. Not slouched like someone taking a break. Not hunched like someone lost or drunk. He was stiff, straight-backed, arms at his sides, looking dead ahead. Looking at me, maybe. I rolled past him, watching in the rear view. He didn't move, didn't turn. Just stood there, alone in that big empty dark dot. It bugged me. All the way home. That whole week it sat with me like a thorn under my skin. Who stands out in a field like that? Middle of the night, miles from anything? I told a buddy at work about it and he laughed, said I'd been driving too long, needed to get some sleep. Probably some farmer checking his fence line or some tweaker. Strung out and wandering, but that didn't fit. That man had been too still, too deliberate. The second time I saw him was a week later. Same stretch of road. Same time of night. I didn't even mean to go that way. The interstate would have been faster. But something pulled me out onto 287 again. Maybe part of me looking for him, part of me hoping he wouldn't be there. And there. He was. Not in the same spot, but close. Same field, maybe 100 yards off the highway this time, further out. Still standing stiff as a board, face turned toward the road. This time I knew for sure he was watching me. His head tracked me. As I drove past, slow and smooth, like he'd been waiting for me. Like he recognized me. I drove home with my hands white-knuckled on the wheel and the radio turned up loud enough to drown out my own breathing. I didn't tell anyone this time. Didn't want to hear another joke about ghosts or serial killers or sleep deprivation, but I started avoiding that road. Didn't matter how late I worked, how much of a detour it meant. I took I-40, I took farm roads. I drove 20 minutes out of my way to keep clear of that stretch outside Amarillo, until one night, months later, I didn't have a choice. Big. Storm had rolled through, flooding out parts of the interstate, traffic backed up for miles. GPS at 287 was the only clear shot if I wanted to make it home before sunrise. I sat there on the shoulder for 10 minutes arguing with myself, heart thumping like a drum in my chest. Finally told myself it had been a long time. I'd imagined that most likely, or he'd moved on, or he wasn't real. So I took the turn. It was past midnight. Sky black as pitch, clouds thick and low, moon nowhere to be found. Just my headlights carving a tunnel through the dark. I told myself not to look. Keep your eyes on the road. But I did. Of course I did. And there he was, closer this time. Right up against the fence line, leaning in a little like he wanted to get a better look. His clothes were wrong, too clean, too old-fashioned maybe, like something out of the 50s. A button-up shirt tucked neat into dark slacks. No coat even though it was cold enough to see my breath fog the windshield. No flashlight. No phone. Just standing there, arms limp at his sides, head cocked like he was trying to figure something out. Like maybe me. I couldn't help it. I hit the brakes. Not all the way, not enough to stop, but enough to slow down more than made sense. Enough to see him lift his hand. Not a wave. Not a greeting. He pointed, out toward the blackness behind him. Out into the empty field. I don't know why, but fear punched through me like an electric shock and I hit the gas hard enough to make the engine whine. I didn't look back. Not until I hit the outskirts of Amarillo and the lights of the city. Swallowed up the night behind me. I should have left it alone. Should have written it off as a ghost story I didn't want any part of. But people are stupid about fear. We poke at it, prod at it, try to make it into something we can explain. Something we can control. So the next weekend, against all better judgment, I drove back. Parked at the edge of that field just past midnight. Got out. The wind out there is constant. Not loud exactly, but it gets inside your head after a while, makes the silence feel alive. I stood by the fence and waited. Long enough my breath started to fog in the chill, long enough my heartbeat settled back into something like normal. Long enough I started to feel stupid. Then he was there. Not a sound, not a step. Just standing in the field 20 yards out where there'd been nothing a second ago. Same stiff posture. Same pale shirt gleaming faint in the dark. Watching me. Wanted to speak. I think I even tried. But my mouth wouldn't work. He pointed again, and this time slowly he started to walk. Not toward me. Out into the dark. Into the field. Into nothing. Something in me cracked. I climbed the fence. I don't remember doing it. Don't remember thinking about it. 1 minute I was watching from the roadside. The next my boots were sinking into soft dirt and dead grass and I was following him. He didn't look back. Just kept walking, slow and steady, like he knew exactly where he was going. The field went on forever. Or it felt that way. No landmarks, no lights. Just the two of us moving deeper into the dark. I couldn't tell how long we walked. Felt like hours. Could have been minutes. Time didn't seem to matter out there. Then he stopped. And so did I. Up ahead, the ground dropped away. A hole wide and black and perfect in the earth, ringed with stones like a mouth lined with teeth. I hadn't seen it until we were standing on the edge. Should have been impossible to miss. Shouldn't have been there at all. He pointed again. Down. I don't know what I saw at the bottom. Not really. Shapes maybe. Movement. Something wet. Something hungry. I turned to run. He was closer than I remembered. Close enough I could see his face. Blank, gray, eyes like empty wells. Mouth too wide, split open in a grin that didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. I don't remember getting back to my truck. Not really. Just flashes. Fence. Road. Headlights. I drove without stopping until I hit Oklahoma. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't go home for a week. I don't take 287 anymore. Don't go near Amarillo if I can help it. But sometimes late at night, When I'm driving unfamiliar roads and the fields stretch out empty and black on either side, I catch myself. Looking, watching. Sometimes I think I see him, still standing, still pointing, still waiting. The highway stretched out like a ribbon of black glass under the moonless sky, the gravel shoulder swallowed by shadows that stretched and breathed with the night. Highway 380, west of Sweetwater, Texas, was a long, lonely stretch of two-lane asphalt where trucks and cars passed like ghosts in the dark. The highway wasn't built for pedestrians, never had been. Signs posted every mile or so warned, no pedestrians allowed. But that never stopped the stories. Every night, around 2 a.m., no matter the season or the weather, drivers reported seeing him, the dead man crossing, a figure that appeared at the exact same spot just past mile marker 48 near the old, forgotten railroad crossing where the tracks had rusted out years ago. People driving that stretch late at night said he was impossible to miss, an old man, pale and thin, dressed in clothes that looked like they belonged to another time, a dusty gray suit and a battered fedora pulled low over his eyes. He would step onto the road and walk slowly across the lanes, a ghost moving against the roar of headlights and tires. Most who claimed to see him said the man didn't seem aware of the cars speeding toward him. No flinch, no jump, no glance. Just steady, relentless crossing, as if the world around him didn't exist or didn't matter. And then, just as the car got close, sometimes close enough to swerve or slam on brakes, he vanished. Gone. No trace. No skid marks, no body, no wreckage, no sound. Just empty road and a stunned driver gripping the wheel, breath caught in their throat. I didn't believe the stories at first. I thought it was a roadside legend, the kind of thing you get around. Gas stations to pass time or to scare off restless kids driving too late. But when you spend enough nights behind the wheel on lonely Texas highways, you start to wonder about the things people swear they've seen. So, I made myself a project. I was going to see this dead man crossing for myself. That it was the fall of '98 when I started. I had a beat-up Chevy and a restless mind. I drove the stretch over and over, sitting at the crossing from about 1:30 a.m. until 3 o'clock, eyes peeled, senses sharp, trying to catch the moment. Nights came cold and clear, others humid and fogged with the breath of the earth. Sometimes the wind would pick up, rattling the dry mesquite trees that lined the road, carrying strange sounds like low whispers or distant cries. The locals called it the whispering wind, but that was just more talk, something to fill the silence. One night around 2 a.m. sharp, I saw him. I swear on everything. I saw him step onto the road from the east shoulder, his thin frame walking, with a slow, deliberate pace. The headlights of my car cut through the darkness, lighting his figure in stark relief. His eyes were hollow, dark pits, and his skin was a sickly gray, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. He didn't seem to breathe, no chest rise, no blink, just walking like a man with a purpose too strong to be stopped. My heart hammered as I slammed on the brakes, tires screaming against the asphalt. The car skidded, spinning just enough to avoid him, but as I looked again, the figure was gone. Just like that, evaporated into the night. No footprints, no shadow. I sat frozen, fingers gripping the steering wheel so tight it hurt, a cold sweat running down my spine. After that night, I kept coming back, but the sightings were never consistent. Some nights, nothing but the wind and the hum of the highway. Other nights, brief glimpses in the corner of my eye, vanishing when I turned my head. The old man seemed to choose his moments carefully, like he was bound to some invisible clock no one else could see. I started asking around. Truckers, local law enforcement, gas station attendants. Most shrugged or smiled nervously, but a few. told me things that didn't fit the usual ghost story mold. They said the man wasn't just a ghost, he was a warning. Something tied to the railroad crossing that once was there, a tragedy buried in the dusty soil of that lonely stretch. One story stood out. Back in 1957, a man named Earl McGraw was killed crossing the tracks when a freight train came barreling through. The story went that Earl was a quiet man, a drifter with a shadowed past. They said he was walking home from the bar, drunk and lost, when the train hit him. His body was mangled, but his eyes remained wide open in the coroner's report, filled with terror and pleading. Since that night, people swore Earl's spirit came back to that crossing. Some said he was trying to finish crossing what he never could. Others believed he was stuck, a restless soul doomed to walk that same path forever, unaware or unwilling to move on. The dead man was cursed to haunt the highway, a grim specter, warning others not to follow his footsteps. One night, curious and desperate for answers, I stayed longer than usual, sitting just past the crossing in the dark. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the temperature dropped sharply, the air thickening, pressing in like it was alive. Then I heard a soft shuffle, the slow scraping of shoes on gravel. I looked up and saw him again, stepping out onto the road. This time, I didn't brake. I didn't move. I watched as the figure made his way slowly across the lanes, a man walking with a weight that felt like centuries. But as he reached the middle of the road, he stopped and turned his head slowly toward me, his empty eyes fixing on mine. The world shifted then. The night grew cold and silent, the hum of the highway fading away like a forgotten dream. His mouth opened, but no words came out, just a low, guttural moan that echoed inside my head. I felt an unbearable sorrow, a crushing loneliness so deep. It threatened to pull me under. And then, the terrible truth. He was no longer just a figure walking. His form began to unravel, like smoke caught in the wind, pieces of him falling away until only a hollow shell remained. The fedora slipped off, revealing a face twisted with pain and regret, and then he was gone, leaving behind the smell of rust and old iron, the scent of the train tracks long gone. I never saw him again after that night, but I carry the memory. With me, the weight of a man trapped between worlds, crossing a road he never finished. And sometimes, when I drive that stretch late at night, I swear I still see a flicker in the corner of my eye, a ghost walking, warning me not to follow, not to cross that line where the dead linger, forever caught in the silence of Highway 380. The night stretched thin and cold over the back roads of San Angelo, Texas, like a dark ribbon unwinding into the vast emptiness beyond the city's weak streetlights. Miles away from the neon glare and the hum of late-night diners, the highway narrowed into winding strips of cracked asphalt flanked by endless mesquite and scrub brush. It was the kind of place people passed through to get somewhere else, nowhere anyone wanted to linger, especially after dark. But for Wade, a truck driver hauling livestock across the state, these roads were routine, the only roads he trusted to move fast enough without crowds or cops poking around. It was close to midnight when Wade's old Chevy rumbled past a faded wooden sign that read "County Line Road Keep Moving," its letters cracked and hanging by threads of chipped paint. The radio had died hours ago, and the hum of tires on pavement was all that kept him company. The moon was thin and half hidden by rolling clouds, and the wind whispered low through the trees like a secret waiting to be spilled. Wade's eyes flicked to the cracked rearview mirror, catching his own face stubbled and tired, eyes a little bloodshot, hands clenched tight on the wheel. He could feel the weight of the road settling in his bones, like something ancient and slow creeping closer in the night. About halfway down the stretch, the headlights caught something, a blur of movement on the shoulder, a flash of pale skin. Against the dirt, Wade slammed the brakes, heart leaping, but when he turned the wheel and stopped, the shoulder was empty. Just dirt and shadows. He shook his head and muttered a curse, the sweat prickling at his neck. No one lived out here. No one walked these roads after dark unless they were lost. Or worse. He rolled forward again, a bit slower now, every nerve tight. That's when the first handprint appeared. It was small and muddy, smudged just over the windshield's inner glass on the driver's side. At first, Wade thought it was dirt from the outside, but when he reached to wipe it away, his fingers found the slickness of dampness beneath the mud. The print was unmistakably from the inside, an imprint left by a tiny hand pressed against the glass. His breath hitched. He stared, blinking hard, rubbing his eyes. There was no one in the cab with him. He was alone. His knuckles went white as he gripped the wheel, glancing over the seat and into the empty back. More prints began to appear, faint and muddy, trailing like ghostly fingerprints across the inside of the windshield and the passenger window. Small hands, smeared with dark earth, pressed against the glass from somewhere inside the truck that shouldn't have been there. Wade's mind raced for explanations. Maybe he'd picked up a hitchhiker without knowing it. Maybe some kid jumped in the back while he stopped at that last gas station. But no, he would have noticed. The truck's interior light was off, and the silence was complete except for the distant rustling of dry leaves in the wind. He turned off the engine and sat there, heartbeat loud in his ears, staring at the prints. They weren't dripping wet, but they were sticky like fresh mud. Reaching out, Wade touched the largest one. A chill shot through his arm. The mud was cold to the touch, colder than it should have been for the desert night. Suddenly, from the darkness outside, a whisper broke the silence, a breathy childlike voice, so faint it could have been the wind. Don't look back. Wade's head snapped toward the rear window. His headlights illuminated nothing but the dry brush and empty road. He slammed the door shut and locked it, hands trembling. The air inside felt thick, heavy, as if the truck itself was holding its breath. He started the engine, desperate to leave, but as the Chevy lurched forward, the windshield fogged over from the inside and more handprints appeared, this time smeared in frantic swirls. Tiny fingerprints scattered like a warning across the glass. The voice came again, louder this time, urgent. Help me. Wade's heart hammered in his chest. He didn't want to look back, but something pulled at him, a deep, aching sorrow that pressed on his soul like a weight. In the rearview mirror, he thought he saw a faint figure, a small girl, pale and wet-faced, sitting in the back seat, staring out with hollow eyes that gleamed in the dim light. He blinked. The seat was empty. The handprints multiplied, creeping across the windows, trails of damp mud making shapes he couldn't quite read. Wade's fingers clawed at the steering wheel. He tried to think, rationalize. Maybe it was some kind of prank, some local urban legend come to life in his mind. But the cold, the voice, the prints, they were real. The truck's radio crackled suddenly, a burst of static breaking through the silence. Then a woman's voice, distorted and hollow, whispered, "Find me before they do." The engine sputtered and died. Wade was stranded, alone on the backroads, surrounded by a night that had suddenly grown thicker, darker, alive. The handprints shifted, the tiny fingers pressing harder against the glass as if trying to claw their way in. The air grew icy, freezing his breath in his lungs. He reached to open the door, but it was locked tight, locked from the inside from some unseen hand. Behind him, the voice rose into a scream, fractured and desperate, echoing through the empty truck. Wade knew then, whatever had left those handprints wasn't just asking for help, it was warning him. And if he didn't listen, he'd be next to leave a mark on the inside of the windshield, trapped forever between the dark and the cold. In the lonely back roads of San Angelo. It was just past midnight when I First saw her on FM 1069. I was driving back home from a long shift at the gas station just outside of Granbury, Texas, one of those long, quiet highways where the only light for miles is the glow of the moon and the occasional flicker of a dying street lamp. That night, the air was heavy, almost sticky, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the silence. I was half listening to the radio, the static mixing with some late-night country tunes, when I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. There she was, standing on the side of the road. A young girl, maybe 12 or 13, wearing an old, faded dress that looked like it had been worn for decades. She was barefoot, the pale skin of her feet barely touching the cracked asphalt. What struck me first wasn't her dress or her strange quietness, but those eyes. They were the darkest things I've ever seen, black from corner to corner. No whites, no iris. Just a deep, empty void that seemed to pull at the edges of my soul. She didn't blink, didn't move except to stand there, still as a statue. Her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me. I slowed down my truck, pulling over a few feet from her. I didn't know why, maybe out of some dumb, human curiosity, or maybe because something inside me told me to. The road was deserted, the trees on either side casting long, twisted shadows that looked like they belonged to something alive. I rolled down the window, the cool night air rushing in with a scent of earth and something else, something metallic and faintly rotten. "Do you remember me now?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the night. Like a knife. I wanted to say no, to tell her she had the wrong person, but something about her gaze held me hostage. It was like she was searching for a name, a face, a memory locked deep inside my mind. I stared at her, trying to place her in my past. Maybe a neighbor's kid? Someone I once knew? But the truth was, I had no idea who she was. She stepped closer. Slow, deliberate. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the road. "You don't remember," she said, almost disappointed. "But I remember you." There was a chill that ran down my spine, the kind of cold that isn't from the air but from something inside. I wanted to start the truck and leave, but my hands felt frozen to the wheel. Her black eyes didn't blink. They just held mine, endless and unreadable. "You should remember," she said. "I've been waiting." I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. My heart was pounding, loud and frantic. "Who are you?" I asked, voice shaking. She smiled then, but it wasn't a smile of happiness. It was slow and sad, like she carried 1,000 years of sorrow inside her. "I'm the one you left behind," she said. "The one you forgot." The truck's engine sputtered in protest, and I turned the key again, desperate to get out of there, but the moment stretched on. I wanted to scream, to break the spell, but I was rooted to the spot. She reached out a hand, pale and thin, almost transparent under the moonlight. "Come with me," she said. "Remember what you did." I tried to pull away, but the door wouldn't budge, as if something unseen was holding me in place. The radio crackled, the static growing louder, filling the cab with a high-pitched whine. Outside, the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the sky. "Do you remember me now?" She asked again, her voice low, almost a chant. Images flashed through my mind like broken film, an old house on the edge of town. A summer long ago, a promise broken, a secret buried deep in the dirt. I saw her face then, younger, smiling, but those black eyes already there, watching me. I saw the moment I turned away, the coldness in my heart when I left her behind. I remembered the fear, the guilt, the silence that swallowed the years. The girl with the black eyes was not just a ghost or a trick of the night. She was a reckoning. A shadow that followed me down every empty road, every sleepless night. And on FM 1069, she was waiting for me to remember, to face what I had tried so hard to forget, the truck finally roared to life, and I slammed the door open, stumbling out into the night. But when I looked back, she was gone. Just the empty road and the whisper of the wind. But I knew she hadn't left. She never would doubt, and every time I drive down FM 1069, I keep an eye out for that pale girl in the old dress, barefoot and waiting. Because she always asks the same question, and the answer never changes. Do you remember me now?